The series begins with a sequence that takes the audience back to ancient times, when 20 rings were forged. 3 for the elves, the wisest and most discerning beings, 9 for humans who always crave power, and 7 given to the dwarves, the most skilled craftsmen. 19 rings are all controlled by Sauron's Master Ring, or in other words,
one ring to rule them all.
Unyielding to this power, the alliance of humans and elves rose up and attacked Mordor, aiming to destroy Sauron once and for all. In a moment where it seemed as though they would fail, Isildur of the humans cut off Sauron's finger, killing him and seizing the magical ring. But the heart of man is easily corrupted. Isildur kept the ring with him instead of destroying it as initially planned. Ironically, this decision cost Isildur his life. He was attacked by a group of orcs and died shortly after. As for the ring of power, it betrayed Isildur and lay still in the riverbed for 2,500 years until it was found by Smeagol. The ring, although it prevented Smeagol from aging over the years, caused him to become corrupt and turn into Gollum. Gollum and the ring spent 5 centuries together in the Misty Mountains. But later, the ring abandoned Gollum and fell into the hands of a new master. Gollum was in unbearable pain over this loss, and we witnessed one of the most famous lines of dialogue ever. The next possessor is Bilbo Baggins, a little hobbit. The story continues 60 years later in the last Shire of the Hobbit people. Here, Bilbo is writing a book about his life while awaiting his 111th birthday party that the villagers are arranging for him. This significant event also includes the presence of the powerful wizard Gandalf. The birthday party is lively and joyful, with fireworks and colorful banners. However, to help with the speech, Bilbo put on the ring and disappeared. He returned home, packed his belongings to leave the Shire. Unfortunately, this action could not escape the keen eyes of Gandalf the Grey. He advised Bilbo to give up the ring. After some hesitation, Bilbo finally agreed to give up the ring, along with the entire house in the Shire, to his nephew Frodo. After finishing everything, Bilbo set off on his journey. Immediately after that is an extremely fast transition to the Mordor area, with the ring wraiths and riders hurriedly leaving their stronghold. Realizing the approaching danger, Gandalf quickly reread ancient books. He returned to Frodo's house, confirming his concern by throwing the ring into the fire in the fireplace. A line of script written in the black speech of Mordor appeared. There is no doubt about it. This is the ring of Sauron. Gandalf tells Frodo everything, that the ring and Lord Sauron are one. Sauron has been searching for the ring for a long time. The wizard also knows that Sauron's forces have captured Gollum, and they have discovered that the ring is in Bilbo's possession. Therefore, the One Ring must leave the Shire, otherwise all the hobbits will be doomed. Frodo feels concerned about the situation, so he passes the responsibility to Gandalf. The wizard immediately refuses because the ring would give him too much power to control. However, Frodo also needs to wear the ring as little as possible because it will attract the attention of the Lord of Mordor. Thought that this hobbit would have to go alone, Gandalf discovered Sam eavesdropping outside. Though initially very angry about this behavior, Gandalf then asked Sam to be a companion and bodyguard for Frodo. The wizard suggested they both go to Bree and he would soon reunite with them. Sam and Frodo left the Shire, marking the first time they went far from home.
If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been.
Fortunately, they continued to gain more companions. After fleeing for stealing at a neighboring farm, 2 other mischievous hobbits, Merry and Pippin, encountered Frodo and agreed to join the journey. However, a group of ringwraiths crosses the thicket, and our little hobbits narrowly escape with their lives by hiding under tree roots swarming with terrifying creatures. At this moment, Frodo was tempted by the ring and almost put it on, but Sam stopped him in time. After that, the group of hobbits arrived in the town of Bree and stayed at the Prancing Pony Inn, where Gandalf had arranged to meet them. Unexpectedly, the wizard with the long beard did not appear. Frodo was forced to lie about his identity to avoid detection. But there was no escaping fate. Naturally, the ring fell right onto Frodo's finger, thereby alerting the ringwraiths to the whereabouts of the hobbit group. Instead, the Ranger Strider immediately approached and warned the small group about the ringwraiths. Shortly after, the ringwraiths attacked the prancing pony, but thanks to Strider's clever arrangements, the whole party escaped. Strider offered to escort the Hobbit group to the elves' Super Rivendell, and no one objected, as they no longer had Gandalf to guide them. So, where is our silver-haired, bearded wizard? He has gone to meet Saruman the White, the leader of the wizards, to discuss a plan against Sauron. In fact, the White Wizard already knows about the ring and the Dark Lord's resurgence plan. He insists to Gandalf that they have no choice but to serve Sauron. Of course, Gandalf resists, and the two clash with wizardly powers. But how could the Grey compete with the White? Gandalf failed and was imprisoned by Saruman on top of Orthanc. By then, we learned that Saruman was building an army to sweep through the region of Isengard. A moth woke Gandalf and delivered a message to him. Then, the wizard was rescued by a large eagle of the Lord Valar. Back with the Hobbit party, while on the way to Rivendell, the group stopped at Weathertop, where Strider handed out weapons to the Hobbit group and let them camp and rest. But their playful nature got them into trouble. The group lit a fire right at night to cook, an action akin to sending out a message saying "Here we are" to the ringwraiths lurking around. Waiting for just that, those entities rushed to attack the hobbits, and although he was wearing the ring to hide his identity, Frodo was still stabbed by the ringwraiths with a Morgul blade. At this point, Strider appeared, drove away the wraiths, and kept Frodo alive. This hobbit was in critical condition, but Princess Arwen of the Elves appeared, taking our ring bearer to Rivendell just in time before the furious pursuit of Sauron's servants. After being treated, Frodo discovered that Gandalf Bilbo was with him along with all the other Hobbit friends. But the joy was short-lived. The King of the Elves, Elrond, told Gandalf that the ring could not stay in Rivendell. Moreover, the royal lineage of humans had broken, and only the heir of Gondor could reunite it. Directly after this event, the audience learns that Strider is actually Aragorn, the heir of Gondor. Additionally, Aragorn and Princess Arwen have also been in love for a long time. However, if Arwen wants to maintain this love, she will have to give up her immortality, which is one of the noble privileges of the elven race, by staying among mortals.
I would rather share one lifetime with you than face all the ages of this world alone.
To find a solution to the problem, Elrond convened an emergency meeting to decide the fate of the ring. He believed that the ring must be destroyed where it was created, which is in the lava flow of Mount Doom. This volcano is located in Mordor next to Sauron's tower Barad-dûr, meaning the journey there will be very long and fraught with dangers, even death. A big argument broke out about who would take on this challenging responsibility. Amid the chaos, Frodo stood up and volunteered for the task. This brave action led to the joining of others, and thus the Fellowship of the Ring was formed with the four Hobbit fellows we turned to from the beginning of the film. The Grey Wizard Gandalf, the rightful heir of Gondor, Aragorn, the dwarf warrior Gimli, the elf archer Legolas, and Boromir, the son of the Steward of Gondor, who is governing the kingdom in place of the rightful king who has not yet appeared. The Fellowship of the Ring heads south, trying to cross the snowy mountains via the Karathras Pass. But Saruman does not allow things to be that easy. He creates an avalanche. Blocking the Fellowship's path, forcing them to change their journey by passing through the mines of Moria, also the domain of the dwarves. Here Gimli discovers that all his brothers have perished, and before the atmosphere of the film can properly settle, clumsy Pippin accidentally reveals the location of the Fellowship to the fierce Beorn. Immediately, that mob of enemies simultaneously rushed in, pushing the Fellowship into a battle outnumbered. Though numerous, the orcs and trolls could not match the superior fighting skills of the Fellowship. Frodo still got hit by an orc spear, but the mithril armor, strong yet light, saved him. The next challenge for the warriors was much more difficult than before. They had to find a way to escape the collapsing mine while facing Balrog, a giant demon that even the orcs feared. In the end, the Fellowship of the Ring managed to leave Moria, but the price was by no means cheap. In the effort to stop Balrog, Gandalf was pulled into the abyss by this creature and went missing without a trace.
Fly, you fools!
Although very distressed, the group had to regain their spirits and continue, because according to Aragorn, they did not have much time left. The warriors' next stop was Lothlorien, one of the most poetic regions of the elves in Middle-earth. Here, they met Galadriel, the queen of this land. And if you didn't know, the narrator's voice at the beginning of the movie is hers.
I feel it in the water.
That evening, Galadriel pulled Frodo aside for a private conversation. She asked the hobbit to look into the mirror, which was actually a basin of water, and tell her what he saw. Frodo complied, and he saw visions of the Shire laid waste, his friends ensnared by orcs, and the terrifying angry eye of Sauron. Galadriel said, "That is what will happen if Frodo fails." Frodo is concerned about his own abilities, but the Queen makes it clear that by accepting to be the ring-bearer, he will become isolated, as no one can share this burden with him. At this time, Galadriel also overcame the temptation of the ring. She then encouraged Frodo by giving him the light of Arendil, which will shine when all other lights have gone out. In fact, Galadriel gave gifts to all the other members of the Fellowship. After being provided with some additional provisions and supplies, the Fellowship bid farewell to Lord Lorien and went down the river. In another development, Saruman has completed the Uruk-hai army, consisting of large powerful creatures with extremely grotesque appearances, aimed at a single purpose of destroying the world of men. The White Wizard orders the entire Uruk-hai to pursue the Fellowship, kill them all, and capture the hobbits alive. You do
not know pain, you do not know fear. You will taste man flesh!
Returning to the passage with the ring, when our heroes reach the Rauros Falls, they have to decide whether to continue to Mordor or turn back to the city of Minas Tirith in the west. While the group is contemplating, Frodo slips away, but he doesn't realize that Boromir follows him. While the Hobbit wants to continue the journey alone, Boromir is blinded by the ring because he believes that it will save the kingdom of Gondor. When Frodo was pressured by Boromir, he put the ring on his finger and disappeared. This was the longest time Frodo had worn the ring, and because of that, he saw Sauron's huge fierce eye. After Frodo woke up, Aragorn was right by his side. With what he had just experienced, Frodo no longer trusted even Aragorn. However, the heir of Gondor overcame the challenge where Boromir failed. At this moment, the Uruk-hai army had arrived very close, forcing the remaining members to engage in battle. Aragorn asked Frodo to run and face the monsters himself. Meanwhile, Boromir, Merry, and Pippin also fought back fiercely, but in the end, Boromir was hit by many arrows and severely injured, helplessly watching his two hobbit friends being captured. Aragorn, being stronger, managed to push back the Uruk-hai army that went to Boromir, who was now barely breathing. Boromir confessed that he had tried to seize the ring, but Aragorn still considered him a valiant warrior. After expressing loyalty to the true king, Boromir passed away. The remaining members, including Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, decided to let Frodo continue the journey on his own, while they headed back inland to rescue Merry and Pippin. When returning to the river, Frodo clearly shows regret for the decision to join, but he remembers Gandalf's words about his destiny. Then, the Hobbit departs on a small boat, but not far when Sam runs after him, insisting on going along, even though Sam can't swim.
I'm going to Mordor alone. Of course you are. And I'm coming with you!
After being saved, Sam reiterated his promise that he would not abandon Frodo. Moved by Sam's spirit, Frodo agreed to let Sam assist him. Once ashore, Frodo and Sam climbed a mountain peak together. In the distance was the land of Mordor, glowing with fiery rage. And our first movie ends here. The Two Towers begins with the scene of Gandalf falling into the abyss with the Balrog. While in free fall, the wizard grabbed the sword, struggled to kill the monster, and landed in the water on the Balrog's body. Meanwhile, we see that Sam and Frodo are still struggling on their way to Mordor, both seemingly just wandering around and not making any progress. Suddenly, they smell something and encounter Gollum, a skinny, pale, ugly creature who once was a hobbit. Immediately, Gollum shows malice. He curses, claiming that Sam and Frodo are thieves. The ring should be his. The two sides fight, but both are at a disadvantage. Gollum is quickly subdued. Sam and Frodo tied the rope around the little creature's neck, and the two discussed. While Sam showed suspicion, Frodo expressed pity for Gollum. In the end, they still had to untie him because he knew the way to Mordor. In Rohan, the Uruk-hai are on their way to take Merry and Pippin to Saruman. unaware that they have captured the wrong people. They also do not know that the trio of brave warriors, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, are following closely to rescue the hobbit pair. They have been traveling for 3 days, and Legolas discovers an important piece of information.
The Uruks turn northeast! They're taking the hobbits to Isengard!
At Rohan Castle, King Theoden is again weakened, both physically and mentally, due to Wormtongue's enchantments. Their advisors are manipulated by Saruman. Meanwhile, Saruman's Uruk-hai are freely causing destruction, killing, and tormenting the Rohirrim. The situation worsened when Eowyn and Eomer informed King Theoden that his son had been attacked by Saruman's army and was severely wounded, unlikely to survive. But Abab thought at that moment Theoden could do nothing more. Eomer, Theoden's nephew, accused Wormtongue, claiming he was a double agent. However, the deceitful man countered by convincing Theoden to expel Eomer. Frustrated, he gathered all the loyal soldiers and left Rohan. That night and day, the entire Uruk-hai escorting Merry and Pippin were ambushed by Eomer's cavalry. The whole foolish army quickly scattered under the tide from Rohan. Meanwhile, Merry and Pippin luckily escaped into Fangorn Forest. There, a pair of hobbits encountered the tree-god Treebeard, a large ancient creature from Middle-earth. Treebeard takes Merry and Pippin to meet the White Wizard. Both think it's Saruman, and director Peter Jackson cuts the scene here. Returning to the journey of Sam and Frodo with the ring, under the guidance of Gollum, they reach the Dead Marshes. All three must pass through the bodies of warriors from the 2nd century, and before finishing the path, Frodo is manipulated by a spirit in the marsh and falls. Gollum quickly pulls Frodo up and saves his life. Afterwards, Frodo and Sam arrive at the Black Gate, the entrance to Mordor. While observing, the ground where Sam was standing collapsed, causing him to fall off the cliff and attract attention from the soldiers. Frodo immediately ran down to rescue him, and all three escaped unharmed. Although breaking in this way is nearly impossible, Mosammas, Toko, Immiscible both still found an opportunity. However, Gollum stopped them and revealed to Frodo that he knew a safer way in through the back door. Of course, Sam remained skeptical of this character, but Frodo showed goodwill, even calling Gollum Smeagol, his name from when he was a hobbit. When Eomer wiped out the Uruk-hai, Aragorn's group arrived. Everyone thought the two hobbits had perished, but Aragorn discovered small footprints leading deep into Fangorn Forest, evidence that the two hobbits were still alive. When Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli ventured deep into the forest to search for the pair Merry and Pippin, we then discovered that the white-clad wizard mentioned by the tree spirit was actually Gandalf reborn. He recounted the process of returning from the brink of death. Then, the wizard warned that Rohan was about to fall into war. Aware of the danger, everyone set off for Rohan. When the group arrives in Rohan, we learn that King Theoden's son, Theodred, has died in Eowyn's arms. Before meeting King Theoden, the four must surrender all their weapons, but Gandalf wisely keeps his powerful staff. Later, the wizard uses that staff to break the spell on King Theoden. Immediately, Theoden became strong and youthful, then banished the traitor Wormtongue. Not long after, villagers urgently reported that the armies of Orcs and Uruk-hai were very close. Although deeply saddened by his son's death, to protect the kingdom, King Theoden ordered the evacuation of all residents to take refuge in Helm's Deep, a fortress nestled deep in the mountains. Don Gandalf is worried that Helm's Deep will not withstand the attack of the Uruk-hai army. Mr. Ben left to find Yulmer and promised to return in 5 days with more than 2,000 soldiers. At the same time, the traitor Wormtongue rushed to Orthanc to inform Saruman about Helm's Deep's weaknesses. Just waiting for this, the wizard dispatched troops to the mountain fortress with orders to show no mercy to anyone. And so, 10,000 Uruk-hai set out immediately during the night, putting Helm's Deep on alert. Returning to Frodo's journey at this moment, the three had reached Ithilien, and Gollum faced his first inner struggle. On one side was the good Smeagol who wanted to help and serve Frodo. On the other was the bad Gollum who only wanted to seize the One Ring. In the end, the Smeagol personality temporarily prevailed.
Come! Smeagol's free!
Even within the next day, he hunted a rabbit for Sam and Frodo. While having their meal, they saw a Harad army heading towards Mordor, which was part of Sauron's campaign. However, this troop was beaten down by Faramir's forces, the brother of the hero Boromir, who died in the first part. Later, Faramir discovered Frodo's group and captured them. During this time of during this time while on the way to Hongstipa, Eowyn gradually developed feelings for Aragorn. But before they could be happy for long, the evacuation group was attacked by Saruman's army. Eowyn was tasked with guiding the people to Hongsteep safely. As for Aragorn, he was attacked by a warg and fell into a raging river. Despite the shock and grief, the remaining survivors had to strive to reach the Hongsteep fortress. Meanwhile, realizing the elf race is in danger, Elrond asks his daughter Eowyn to leave Middle-earth to avoid the deceit here. Wontam basan salanpai. With great love for Aragorn, naturally, the princess refused. Elrond continued to persuade her by showing her the future if she stayed in Middle-earth. Aragorn is only mortal, so he will die, leaving Elrond with boundless regret. Finally, the princess compromised and set off. Right after that, Galadriel appeared and questioned Elrond about whether they should withdraw from the battle, leaving Middle-earth under Sauron's control. Meanwhile, Dafur, Nidwa, Sam, and Frodo were taken into Henneth Annwn, a hideout of men in Ithilien. That day and night, Gollum also had to endure being chained. Faramir wanted to send this creature to Nirvana, but Frodo insisted on saving the small creature. Frodo had to admit that he was its master. On the other hand, Gollum misunderstood Frodo's good intentions, thinking that he indirectly caused his capture. As a result, he struggled internally, leading Faramir to continue interrogating and discover the One Ring that Frodo is carrying. Sam asserted their goal is to destroy the ring, but due to his desire to prove himself to his father, Faramir decided the ring should belong to Gondor. We return to Rohan. Fortunately, when Aragorn didn't perish at the pass, he was washed ashore and awakened by Theldred's horse, Brego. Aware that there was very little time left, the steward of Gondor urged his horse toward Helm's Deep. Everyone was joyful at Aragorn's return, but now was not the time to relax, because the densely packed Uruk army out there could overwhelm everyone's efforts. Moreover, the soldiers here were few and lacking combat skills. Luckily, that very night, the reinforcement group of elves led by Haldir arrived to assist, showing goodwill from Elrond. Meanwhile, deep in the Fangorn forest, Merry, Pippin, and the tree-like creatures were discussing a plan to defeat Saruman. And thus, one of the most epic battles in cinematic history officially commenced.
So it begins.
In the torrential night rain, a shower from the Helm's Deep fortress was also launched directly at the Uruk-hai army and claimed many lives. However, that was not enough. The monsters retaliated with a direct combat strategy, raising ladders not to ask to leave, but to penetrate deep into Helm's Deep's territory. This attack seemed dangerous, but was not enough to shake the defensive system of the protagonists. But while Aragorn and his allies were still concentrating their efforts to fend off the attack, suddenly two bombs struck right at the crucial position of the fortress, allowing the Uruk-hai to flood into the stronghold like a torrent. After that, even though Aragorn and Gimli gave their all to resist, the main gate of Helm's Deep was still knocked down, and the Uruk-hai forces officially gained the upper hand. The situation worsened further when Haldir fell along with a few other elves. At Hornburg, the resistance had completely increased. The Uruk-hai gradually penetrated deeper, forcing the defenders to retreat. In another development in Fangorn Forest, after a long period of discussion, the tree spirits decided not to join the battle, but
Ents cannot hold back this storm.
However, clever Pippin did not accept this. He skillfully led the tree spirit to a part of the forest near Isengard that Saruman had devastated. Boiling with rage due to Saruman's treachery, the supreme tree spirit summoned his kind for a collective revenge. They proclaimed it as the final attack and headed straight toward the land of Isengard. Meanwhile, at the heart of Helm's Deep, King Theoden is visibly in despair, but Aragorn does not give up. He recalls Gandalf's promise and leads Theoden and Legolas into the midst of the battlefield with the aim to strike the Uruk-hai first, buying time for the women and children to escape into the forest. As the cavalry was on a suicide charge, the first dawnlight began to shine into the valley, and from the northern hill, something was rushing down. It was the powerful wizard Gandalf. He had returned with Eomer and his army. Unable to withstand the heat from the reinforcements, the Uruk-hai panicked and retreated into Fangorn Forest. Out of the frying pan and into the fire, they fell right into the sights of the Ents. At this time, the Ent army had taken control of the Isengard region, easily smashing the remaining Uruk-hai. Additionally, they destroyed the Isen Dam, flooding Orthanc with river water, drowning the remaining orcs, and imprisoning Saruman in his tower. Meanwhile, in the north, Frodo, Sam, Gollum, and Faramir are heading towards Osgiliath, a ravaged city on the edge of the Anduin River. Here, they encounter another ringwraith riding a flying beast. The ringwraith almost captures Frodo, if not for the intervention of Sam and Faramir. As Sam watched the ringwraith fly away and learned of the victory at Helm's Deep, he reflected emotionally on his belief in a happy ending for their journey. Frodo showed doubt about this belief. especially after he almost killed Sam. After that, Boromir's younger brother set Sam and Frodo free, even helping them on their journey. After the victory at Helm's Deep, Gandalf and the others turned their gaze towards Mordor, realizing the dark future approaching.
The battle for Middle-earth is about to begin.
The wizard asserts that all hope now rests on Frodo and Sam. Meanwhile, angry over being betrayed, Gollum has allowed his evil persona to take full control. He plans to reclaim the One Ring by luring Frodo and Sam to the place of the creature he describes as her. He eagerly leads the way for the Hobbit pair, and in the distance, the lands of Mordor are ablaze. The final part of the Chuanan series continues the events right after the Two Towers. But at the beginning of the film, we are taken back to the past, when Gollum was still Sméagol. After seeing Deagle fish the ring out of the Alduin River, Sméagol suggested receiving the ring as a birthday present. Deagle firmly refused. Blinded by greed, Sméagol struggled with Deagle, strangling his dear brother to death. After killing his brother, Sméagol took the magic ring deep into the snowy mountains and gradually transformed into Gollum. When this scene ends, we return to reality, as the duo Frodo and Sam, guided by Gollum, continue towards Mordor. At this point, Mount Doom is within sight, but Sam still has doubts about Gollum's actions. On the other hand, Frodo chooses to trust that small creature. After that, the warriors, including the victors who led at Helm's Deep, appeared at this now devastated Isengard. Before they moved on, Treebeard announced that his kind had taken over the area, while Saruman was isolated inside Orthanc. Not long after, Saruman appeared on his tower. He started with his rhetoric towards Theoden, but the steadfast king insisted that peace would only be established when Saruman was gone, to pay for the debts of the Rohan people at Westfold and Helm's Deep. Saruman's attempt at reasoning with Theoden was unsuccessful, so he turned to Gandalf, arguing that Frodo was headed for his death and that Aragorn could not claim the throne of Gondor. To conclude his point, the wizard dramatically produced the Palantir and asserted that he knew the enemy's every move. Saruman then further announced that Lord Sauron was preparing to launch the final attack. Realizing the urgent situation, Gandalf decided to negotiate with Saruman, asking him to calm down and speak reasonably. However, Saruman once again turned, attacking Gandalf with a cloud of fire. Taufunha, Sasto, finished. Gandalf was also the White Wizard, so he countered by breaking Saruman's staff, directly expelling him from the Council of Wizards. When Saruman had not yet spoken, Wormtongue appeared. King Theoden said that Wormtongue could surrender and return to being a man of Rohan once more. Wormtongue seemed to submit to the king, but Saruman asserted that he was not free and slapped him to the floor. Unable to control his anger, Wormtongue stabbed the old wizard in the back with a fatal blow, only to be struck by an equally fatal arrow from Legolas. But Legolas's quickness was not enough to save Saruman, as he fell from the tower, dying on the spot. Chum side. When the Palantir slipped from Saruman's sleeve, Pippin quickly picked it up, but then had to hand it back to Gandalf. Then, the group heads to Edoras to celebrate the victory at Helm's Deep. Pippin notices Gandalf watching him, but Merry quickly pulls him into the festivities. Afterwards, Aragorn talks to Gandalf about Frodo's journey to destroy the ring. The wizard admits that he has no clue about the little hobbit, but his heart tells him that Frodo is still alive. Somewhere in the land of Mordor, Frodo and Sam are fast asleep, while Gollum is talking to himself. Sméagol thinks he should kill Frodo to steal the ring, but Gollum proposes a plan to offer Frodo to her, and he just needs to gather what remains.
She's always hungry. She always needs to feed.
However, this plan was overheard by Sam. He intended to call Gollum out, but Frodo stopped him because the hobbits still believed that Gollum was not an evil being. At Edoras, while everyone is fast asleep, Aragorn steps outside beside Legolas. The elf realizes that Sauron's eye is turning to the next target. Meanwhile, Pippin was attracted to the Palantir and secretly took it from Gandalf's hand. Ignoring Merry's warnings, Pippin looked into the orb and was quickly manipulated by Sauron. Unable to resist the terrifying power, Pippin gradually lost consciousness, but Gandalf and Aragorn managed to catch the orb from his hand. Gandalf anxiously questioned Pippin, still in a daze, whether he had revealed anything about Frodo and the ring. Pippin denied it and revealed that he saw a vision of a city engulfed in flames. The next day, Gandalf, Aragorn, Theoden, Legolas, Gimli, and the Hobbit duo Merry and Pippin discussed the information that Pippin received. Gandalf is sure that Sauron thinks Pippin is the ring bearer, But actually, the target of the Dark Lord of Middle-earth is Minas Tirith, the capital of Gondor. After failing at Helm's Deep, Lord Sauron realizes that humans are the real threat and he will find a way to stop this. Gandalf tells Theoden that if Gondor is in danger, Rohan must go to war again. However, since Gondor did not take any action at the Battle of Hornburg, the Rohirrim also have no responsibility. After that, Gandalf asked Aragorn to go south and call the Black Ships to aid Minas Tirith, while he went there directly with Pippin. Meanwhile, Princess Arwen was heading towards Greyhaven with a group of elves. Elrond's daughter saw a vision of Eldarion, her son with Aragorn. This image urged her to leave the group and return to Rivendell. There, Arwen implored Elrond to reforge the sword Narsil for Aragorn. At first, the elven leader was hesitant, but he realized that Arwen was gradually losing her immortality. Arwen continued to persuade her father that this was her choice and nothing could pull her away anymore. Soon after, Elrond had to accept seeing the sword Narsil reforged by the hands of craftsmen. And at that moment, Gandalf and Pippin had arrived at the final stronghold of Minas Tirith, 1,000 feet above the ground. Denethor was now just a man engulfed in sorrow, unwilling to call for aid from Rohan, even though the kingdom stood on the brink of destruction. That Denethor believed it was all just to push him off the throne and put Aragorn in his place. He even said he would crush the White City before anyone else sat on the throne of men. However, Pippin still agreed to serve Denethor to repay the debt for his son Boromir, who fell in battle. But Gandalf openly showed his annoyance because the steward of Gondor was not trying to find a way to avert the danger, but was instead gloomy while Sauron was about to crush Minas Tirith. That night in Minas Tirith, while Pippin was preparing his gear, Gandalf looked towards Gondor with a worried mind. He believed that Gondor was nearing destruction, that if the orcs were to capture Osgiliath, there would be no defenses left between the human capital and the Mordor legions. Despite Pippin's encouragement, Gandalf was not much more optimistic. Things got worse when the old wizard announced that the Ringwraith chief who seriously wounded Frodo in part 1 would also appear. This one cannot be killed by any man, and his lair is in Minas Morgul. As we talk about him, he arrives. We are immediately taken to Minas Morgul. This place calls the ring back to its master and Frodo cannot resist its pull. Seeing this, Gollum and Sam quickly pull Frodo back, and then Minas Morgul shoots a bright green light into the night sky. Waiting for this, the Ringwraith and his force from Mordor quickly launch with the target being the human kingdom of Gondor. On the other side of the lane, Gandalf also grasped the situation. He ordered Pippin to light the signal beacon at the highest point of Minas Tirith to pull for the defense campaign. At the same time, in Osgiliath, Faramir and his army are preparing for battle. He sends scouts to gather information so that if the orcs attack from the north, everyone will have time to prepare. On the other hand, in the middle of the river, the commander of the orc army, Gothmog, also orders his subordinates to remain silent while approaching Osgiliath to create a surprise for the attack. After breaching the first line of defense, the orc army began their conquest, and it was then that Faramir realized they were not attacking from the north. Although the second son of Denethor had deployed all troops to the riverbank for defense, the situation became critical as Gothmog's soldiers took hold and prepared to invade the city. A major battle ensued, and although they had the upper hand initially, as time went on, Faramir and his comrades were increasingly overwhelmed by the diverse enemy forces. In the end, they had to withdraw from Osgiliath, but this was not the end yet. Faramir and the other riders were still pursued relentlessly on their retreat. Fortunately, Faramir managed to preserve his life thanks to Gandalf's assistance. So, on the retreat, Faramir warned Gandalf about Gollum's betrayal after meeting the Hobbit group in Ithilien. At this moment, the Fellowship is still relentlessly making their way to Cirith Ungol. Gollum eagerly tries to win Frodo's favor by saying that he understands the burden the Hobbit is struggling to manage. So, amping at Osgiliath, after driving out the people of Gondor, the leading wraith commanded the soldiers to sweep and exterminate all inhabitants of Minas Tirith, also stating that he would end the wizard Gandalf. As for Denethor, still haunted by his deceased son Boromir, he sent Faramir back to the battlefield once more, even though this action was highly likely to kill him. At the Cirith Ungol Pass, the two hobbits are sound asleep, and Gollum stealthily throws all the provisions down the cliff and blames Sam for eating everything. Frodo, by this time, was nearly exhausted by the ring and was no longer lucid. When Sam said he wanted to carry the ring for Frodo, it was the straw that broke the camel's back, and Frodo completely turned his back on his friend. He sent Sam home. Meanwhile, Faramir is bravely charging into battle, while Denethor coolly munches lunch and has Pippin sing mournful songs. Naturally, Faramir cannot hold out. He returns on horseback, barely clinging to life. In another scene at Dunharrow, someone is slowly riding a horse up the hill. It is Elrond, arriving to present Aragorn with the noble sword Anduril. The King of the Elves requested Aragorn to use this sword to summon the army of the dead Dunharrow, using them to stop the landing of the corsair ships that have now set sail from the southern shore. Aragorn quickly accepted. That night, the King of Sukondor along with Gimli and Legolas went to the Timholt forest. Here, all three encountered the King of the Ghosts. Initially, he intended to kill all three, but Aragorn raised the sword Anduril, forcing him and his followers to fulfill the ancient oath. Because the army of the dead had betrayed Isildur in the past, if they wanted to be freed, they had no choice but to serve Aragorn, the new king of Gondor. The next morning, King Theoden of Rohan was determined to go into battle with 6,000 cavalry, but he was unaware that Eowyn and Merry had defied orders and mingled among the soldiers. The forces of Mork established dominance by launching the heads of human prisoners, creating fear and chaos among the people. At this moment, Denethor saw Faramir in a dire state and believed his second son had also died. Coupled with witnessing the formidable strength of the Orc army, Denethor was utterly devastated and ordered the people of Gondor to abandon their positions. Furious at the cowardly behavior of the steward, Gandalf deposed Denethor and took command himself. Then, the two sides took turns shooting stones, creating a balanced battle. But that was before the Witch King of Angmar and the other Ringwraiths entered the fray with dozens of Nazgul. This support tilted the advantage significantly towards the forces of Mordor. Meanwhile, in the distance at Cirith Ungol, Gollum betrayed Frodo, leaving him to face the Spider Queen Shelob. But fortunately, Sam returned and drove the creature away. However, he thought Frodo had died. Only when a group of orcs came to investigate did Sam realize that Frodo had only been knocked out by Shelob's venom. Returning to Minas Tirith, Denethor had completely collapsed in despair. He decided to organize a funeral for himself and his unconscious son Faramir, as he did not know that his younger son was still alive. But Gandalf and Pippin knew. They quickly went to rescue both, but by the time they arrived, Denethor was already on the pyre. As the flames gradually consumed his body, Denethor realized his son was still alive. Knowing he would die, Denethor rushed out of the tomb with his body ablaze and fell from the towering height of Minas Tirith. Inside the city, humans are increasingly losing strength. When the outer gate was breached and the trolls began pouring in like a flood, the defenders were forced to retreat to the upper levels. But doing so meant leaving the bloodthirsty orcs to plunder and slaughter everyone below. However, amidst the chaos, a horn sound pierced through the space, making everyone turn their heads towards the riverbank. What is happening? By the shadow of the sun, the Rohan troops have finally arrived. The reinforcements charged straight into the orcs with tremendous power, but the advantage didn't last long, because the Harad troops and the Mumakil elephants also joined the battle. Shortly after, the Witch King encountered the King of Rohan, and this monstrous being killed both the noble horse and the revered monarch. Thus, the battle was decided, humans lost, and Middle-earth officially belonged to Sauron. That's just a scenario if Minas Tirith didn't have any additional support. In reality, it was different. The corsair ships had anchored, but it wasn't to help the orcs. It was the return of the king with the army of the dead from Dunharrow. After that, the orcs, Haradrim and Mumakil were all defeated by the reinforcements, and the Witch King was struck down by Eowyn because
I am no man.
Done. The losses of humanity were significant. King Theoden has died, and Aragorn must free the army of the dead, so that they can rest in heaven as they have fulfilled their oath. We return to the journey with the ring. At Cirith Ungol, Sam successfully rescued Frodo. In fact, there was almost nothing here, because the orc guards were fighting to the death for Frodo's mithril armor. The two of them began the long journey to Mount Doom. However, Gandalf realizes there are up to 10,000 orc soldiers stationed between Cirith Ungol and Mount Doom, which means Frodo and Sam cannot complete the mission. However, Aragorn steps up to assert that he will lead the remaining forces to the Black Gate to distract the orcs and Sauron, allowing Frodo and Sam to carry out the task. But at this moment, Frodo was completely exhausted. He couldn't take another step. Sam refused to give up, lifted his friend onto his shoulders, and summoned all his strength to move towards Mount Doom.
On this journey, Gollum returned, constantly attacking the pair to seize the ring. And this is also when the Battle of Morannon began.
For Frodo.
While the battle reached its climax, Frodo finally brought the ring to the volcano's edge. However, instead of dropping the ring and ending it all, the Hobbit was overwhelmed by the supreme power. He slipped the one ring onto his finger and vanished. This action naturally alerted Sauron. He immediately dispatched the Nazgul to Mount Doom. Done. Without that intervention, the ring-bearer pair was already in enough trouble. Gollum showed up, knocked Sam unconscious, and launched into a final battle with Frodo, even biting off the finger wearing the ring of the Hobbit. In the end, Gollum was reunited with the love of his life. But Frodo, still blinded by the ring, did not let things end that way. He rose up to counterattack, and after a struggle, both fell freely. While Gollum fell into the lava with the ring, his face still elated, Frodo managed to hold on to the cliff even though he was exhausted. Immediately after, Sam pulled his friend up just as the ring sank into the scorching lava and was destroyed. The Dark Lord ring was obliterated, so Sauron shared the same fate. His eyes screamed before his presence vanished into the void, causing the collapse of the Tower of Barad-dûr. The Master was no more, so Sauron's followers like orcs and the ring wraiths also perished, and the Black Gate along with Mordor started to tremble. With these widespread destructions, Frodo and Sam were trapped in Mount Doom, and they began to regret that they might not see the Shire again. However, because the Nazgul had all gone to the underworld, Gandalf was able to summon the giant eagles, thereby rescuing the small yet brave hobbits in time. They awoke in peaceful Minas Tirith, reunited with all the members of the Fellowship of the Ring. Also in the capital of mankind, Aragorn officially takes the throne, becoming the King of the West, ready to establish a new era. He also reunites and comes home with Arwen after many hardships. However, they are not the main characters in this event, but rather the hobbits are.
To no one.
The entire fellowship and the people knelt at the feet of the tiny creatures to express their gratitude for what they had accomplished. Finally, our little fellows have returned home. In this peaceful land, Sam has reunited with his family's embrace, but Frodo's journey is not yet over. Although he survived, Frodo could not recover from the scars that the rings had created. He realized that he could no longer find peace in Middle-earth, so he went with Gandalf, Bilbo, Elrond, and Galadriel to Valinor, the Undying Lands. Finally, the ship set sail straight towards Atomos, leaving Middle-earth and the legendary War of the Rings 6 behind. At this point, Pippin and Merry were also gone, leaving only Sam gazing towards the long sunset. The series ends with a scene of Sam walking along Park End, greeted by his wife and children. Sam sighs and delivers the final line before entering the house.
I'm back.
The door closes, and the screen gradually fades to black. The battle with Lord Sauron ended like that,